bills and continuing resolutions?
No. One of the biggest threats, I believe, to the country now is the $23 trillion debt. And to put it in perspective, what we pay on the debt service and in a low interest rate environment would cover about 47% of the current defense budget. I can tell you as a banker, back in the 80s, we had what we called highly leveraged transactions, which was great as long as interest rates were low and everything was going fine. But one little blip, states live within their budgets. You live within your budget. Every business has to live within their budget. There's no reason the government doesn't live within its budget. And I would tell you, I have no problems with a balanced budget resolution.
$23 trillion is what we are currently in debt. 23 trillion, that's 106% of GDP. We have to curb this now before it gets even further out of hand. President Obama backed up our debt, and I love President Trump, but we're getting there. We need to stop spending like it's going out of style. And so I am for a balanced budget resolution.
I would agree. We need a balanced budget. And like both these gentlemen said already, this is one of our greatest threats in the future. You know, as an economics major, you understand very quickly that value is only ascribed to something because people think it's valuable. At some point, the world's going to wake up and realize that our $23 trillion in debt means our dollar really doesn't have the value that people believed it had. When that day comes, everything will begin to crumble. We have to live within budgets. Like the men already said, states have to live within balanced budgets. The federal government needs to live within a balanced budget. We need a resolution, absolutely. And I blame the Republicans. In 2018, they could have done it, and they didn't. And I said they deserve to lose the House because they didn't go to Washington and balance the budget like they said they were going to. They told us they were going to do. So it's time that we send people there that will actually do that.
I think you simply look at the economy of this state. We have a balanced budget amendment. Look how things are going, and people often look to this state in terms of the recovery, in terms of how much more employment we have, and incredible growth in biotechnology in the Fishers area. Great things are happening. We've got several Democrat candidates for the presidency who, as I've told people, I wouldn't let them handle my budget of my home, let alone this country. We have to cut the spending. I just grew up in a family where my dad had a yellow clipboard, and if I owed him $1, if I owed him $15,000 as I was paying him back for my college education, it was on the clipboard. You don't buy what you can't afford.
Our spending is out of control. There's so much waste, fraud, and meaningless programs without measurable results. As a business person, our budget is based on measured results, and we need to take the same approach in creating a balanced budget. My parents always taught me to leave things better than the way you found them. We need to balance the budget and live within our means and continue to leave things better for our next generation. Continue to work on the budget and stop the wasteful spending and leave things better for the next generation.
Well, the fact of the matter is that we haven't had a budget passed through Congress since 2006. Since then, it's been a series of continuing resolutions. We spend right now $4.2 trillion. We brought in 2018 a record $3.32 trillion. So we outspend ourselves by about $1 trillion every year, if not more. The fact of the matter is, we have to reduce spending. But are you going to do it in 1 year? Absolutely not. If you did, it's a 25 to 30% cut just to balance the budget. You're never going to get that through Congress. What you have to do is you have to balance the budget in steps. Over a 5-year period, we can do this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the next question will be directed to Andrew Bales, and many of you kind of answered it indirectly, but the Republican Study Committee proposed a budget for fiscal year 2020 that would balance the budget in 6 years. Would you vote for it?
Yes, I agree that it's not gonna be overnight for us to balance our budget. I would definitely vote for that.
I would echo that, absolutely. And again, taking the steps in the right direction, but we need bold leadership that's not afraid of the consequences back home, because that's every representative of the districts they represent. They're trying to get more funding for the people of their district. But we have to remember collectively that we have got to cut that spending back. If we have a good bill, and again, I'm a little skeptical because Republicans had the House for so long and they didn't do anything, but if it is a good spending bill, absolutely, I will sign on to that in a heartbeat, because this is, like I said earlier, this is one of the greatest threats that we face as a nation, in my opinion, so.
Well, obviously, I'm going to agree with them. And I could keep it less than a minute and just stop there, but I have to tell you, when I started Timmy Global Health back in 1997, I'd had the great blessing of working with Mother Teresa, and I started a program where we trained up the next generation of doctors. As I called around the country, everyone said, "Where are you located?" And I said, "Central Indiana." They said, "We all target that place because people there are compassionate, supportive, giving." So let me say this: if we pass we have a balanced budget, we start cutting these costs in Washington, that's not going to affect our district because we take care of each other. People know that all over the world.
As a business owner, a balanced budget is very important. So yes, I agree. I know Todd Young is working on a bill to start working on passing a balanced budget in 2 years. That would make things more controllable. I don't know if it's attainable, but if we can work towards something like that, that would be great.
Six years is a great timeline to balance a budget. I have absolutely no issue with it. But before I say I'd support the bill, I have to know exactly what's in it. What are you going to cut? Because the last thing I want to do is cut Social Security or Medicare and Medicaid for those that we promised it to.
Not surprisingly, I agree. But here's the thing, and I think we kind of got to it before, is we need to make sure that we're going to be true to our word. And Republicans, unfortunately, have been just as guilty as Democrats of this lately. And so it's one thing to say it, it's another thing to do it. And it's going to take principled leaders that are willing to make the tough decisions. And we need to do that. It's not fair to our kids, it's not fair to my kids, it's not fair to my grandkids to pass on.
Okay, thank you. The next question is for Micah Beckwith. Do you support the penny plan for budgets and why?
The penny plan for budgets, to be honest with you, I'd have to look into that more because I have not seen that plan, and I'm not going to sit here and try to make something up. But essentially, again, if we can cut spending and balance the budget, that's what we need to do, and that has got to be the focus. If that plan does it, well, let's do it. But for me, again, it's the greatest threat that we're facing in our society right now.
The only group I've heard about with the penny plan was the concept of taxing the rich. Let's have them pay a penny on so much income so that we balance this out. It's interesting that we would be in a country like the United States that's had such growth in such a short time. And you look at how many other countries look to us for our success. Well, it's not surprising. We have a republic. We have a democracy. We have prosperity, we have freedom, we have liberties that other people don't have. It doesn't make sense to me that we should penalize people for being successful, but at the same time, I do think that most of the people that I've worked with are very interested in helping their fellow men. Again, in the 5th District in particular, I think we have a wonderful group of people who can carry their own.
With policy like this that I don't have all the information for, what I do before I make a decision is get the facts, look at the research, talk to the experts, and then make my decision. This country was built on capitalism, and we need to support that, not socialism. And we need to support people who are working hard for success. That's what this country is built on. So we need to support that principle.
For those of you that don't know, the penny plan is essentially take 1 penny for every federal dollar spent, and you take it and you pay down the debt. The issue with this is that it doesn't balance the budget for at least 17 years, unless your revenue projections are a lot higher than I would think. But that's the issue, is that it doesn't solve the issue. 17 years.
So the problem, and we talk about the problem with penny plan, any plan to balance the budget, it's not only what you take in, but it's how much you spend. And we have problems with how much we spend, and so you gotta take a look at the underlying programs, and that's where you get back to, say, making the tough choices. You gotta take a look at the programs, and programs we don't need, we get rid of, programs we can pass on to someone else we need to. And then we'll get talking about taxes later on and stuff like that. Tax should be a streamlined, flat, simple tax rate. And then you use that based on the revenue you have. I used to work for a guy named Mitch Daniels. He used to talk about when you forcibly take money from people. He used to remind us on his staff, when you forcibly take money from people, we call it taxes. You need to be good stewards of people's money, and I think that's the problem. We've not been good stewards of the people's money.
Everywhere we go, we're taxed. We're taxed on our paycheck. We're taxed on our phone bill. We're taxed and taxed and taxed again. 1 penny out of every dollar, I'm not sure would really do that much. And if they say 17 years, then okay, I'll agree with that. 17 years, it's too long. In the meantime, our costs are going to go up for other things. No, I think we need to look at a better plan. Unfortunately, things are going to have to be cut. And we're going to have to really take a good look at that. You know, I am also for not cutting Social Security, not cutting Medicare expenses, but where do we look? You know, the wasteful spending that we're sending millions of dollars to other countries who hate us might be an option. We might take a look at that. But I think that, yeah, a penny on the dollar, 17 years, I'd have to look more into it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. We asked this question to find out how much you know about the penny plan. Penny plan has been proposed by Tea Party Patriots, and you can check it out on their website, teapartypatriots.org. It is to take 1% out of discretionary spending every year, and it will balance the budget in 4 years, not 17 years. So I would encourage the candidates to look into that. The next question is for Chuck Dietzen. Should abortions be illegal after 20 weeks of gestation, 10 weeks, or 5 weeks?
I personally am pro-life. We had 150 foster children in our home, as I think I mentioned, and those mothers chose life. And so they came to our home as foster children. They were loved. I personally don't agree with the concept of abortion at all. Now, with mothers' health, potential death, obviously that comes often. That's what's typically proposed, is why you have to have abortion. I will tell you, certainly that is not the majority of the cases, as we all know. I have to say too, being a pediatric rehab doc, the kids that I hold so dear, that I love, who have disabilities, many of them could have been considered defective fetuses. They weren't to me. They're wonderful people, great souls that make this world a better place, so I'm against it.
As a conservative Republican, I am pro-life. I support the Republican platform for pro-life. I also support adoption. In fact, a few weeks ago, I did a little interview, and it's on my website. I have a good friend that has adopted 2 children out of foster care, and it's a very touching story. I encourage you to go to my website, watch this. It will bring a tear to your eye. It's bethforindiana.com.
I am pro-life for the whole life, from conception until natural death.
Thank
fact of the matter is that Roe v. Wade does not guarantee an abortion at all. If you read the ruling, it states that through the 14th and the 9th Amendments, it guarantees a right to privacy in the first trimester of the pregnancy. After the first trimester, the state is allowed to enact legislation if it sees fit. If the Supreme Court wanted to make abortion a right, they would not let the state enact legislation at any point in the pregnancy.
Well, I'm pro-life, and I will support and defend the rights of the unborn. I don't believe we should be sending tax dollars for abortion. I just think it's wrong. It's a choice that the government shouldn't make. And I have a grandson. My wife was just down the other day babysitting for our grandson that presented, I guess, in a medical term in 24 weeks. And in a lot of circumstances, if where these people had their way, he wouldn't be here with us today. He's a lovely, caring young man at 2.5 years old and has a bright future. And every day, every second we have with him, we cherish. So I'm pro-life.
As you can imagine, I'm also pro-life. I believe that life begins at conception, and I'm against abortion in principle. I support legislation for states to promote other forms of other things besides abortion. Right? When you look at the majority of abortions, they're done for birth control purposes. They don't want that child. There are so many other options available, and I would support any legislation that I could look at that would benefit states who support that and promote that. As a teacher, I'm usually looking at not punitive functions, but positive reinforcement. What can we do for those states to support them to stop these types of issues? Thank you.
I'm 100% pro-life, and I don't apologize for that. God is the author of life, and from conception, and like Danny said, until natural death, we've got to fight for life. I'm going to come after Planned Parenthood. I'm going to come at, when I'm in office, I'm not going to be apologetic about saying, hey, we're not going to take taxpayer money and fund these kill mills, these places that kill children. And I will always be someone that fights for the least of these. We've murdered over 60 million babies since Roe, and that's a conservative estimate. And also, too, think about this. When does the Supreme Court have the power to make laws of the land in the Constitution? Where is that? We have a Supreme Court. We have a federal judicial branch that is out of control, and we need to rein it back in the way our founders intended, and get back to legislation actually happening in Congress and in state legislators, and not in our judicial branch.
Okay, thank you.